Do you struggle with discipline? Maybe you're a former athlete or someone who knows what it's like to be consistently training in the gym, but in this season of life, you can't seem to figure out your fitness and health. If you're in that space where you're looking at old progress photos or looking at what your body used to do, and instead of seeing it as something that's motivating and inspiring, it just creates friction, frustration, and resistance, this is for you. My name is Brian Pickowicz. I'm one of the head coaches of the Fitness Project, where we focus on building fit and healthy leaders. And today I'm going to give you 10 strategies, 10 steps that you can use to start reclaiming your discipline, get yourself unstuck, and ultimately start to feel like an athlete again. Now, this isn't exclusively for those of you who have been athletes, but it's more about understanding that there's a certain energy that we have. There's a certain, let's say, standard of life that we have when we are taking care of ourselves. I know for a lot of people, when you've been in shape before and you see yourself not there, it's really challenging mentally to flip the switch and get back to where you used to be. I've been there myself, and I'm going to share some of the strategies that I used to go from someone who was injured, who put on 30 pounds, to getting back to the point where I felt like an athlete again. I could really put myself in a space where I was dominating every day. But before we get there, I want to share a little text message with you, because this message, this video, came as a byproduct of a text message I received from a friend. So this gentleman, he's in finance, he's successful, and he also has a family. But he used to be a former athlete, he used to be a college athlete. He knows what it's like to be at his best. And we were talking about how hard it is for him to get back in that zone. And the message he shared was, I struggle with discipline, and that is linked to being frustrated with the fact that I feel like I'm starting from square one when I know what I used to be able to do. So if you've ever been in that space, it's pretty frustrating. It's pretty, I'd say, defeating. As someone who found myself there a few years ago, I know that a lot of the resistance to getting back into shape wasn't that I didn't know what to do. It's that I couldn't get my brain, I couldn't get my mind to shift from, hey, I know what it's like to dominate and be my best, to this new body that wasn't able to perform. At the time, for me, I was a former bodybuilder. So I had moved from New Hampshire to Los Angeles. Me and my wife, we were competing in bodybuilding in New England, and things were going really successful. We decided to move to LA, the hub of fitness, because we wanted to learn, we wanted to grow, and we wanted to become pros. But once we got there, really seeing how the professionals in the bodybuilding space live, I realized that wasn't in alignment for me. So going in the last contest, I competed. 4 weeks after the contest, I said, hey, I don't really want to keep doing this, but I made the goal, I made the commitment, I'm going to push through. The contest went pretty well. I got second in my category. But after the contest, I realized, like, hey, I'm more focused on helping people change their lives than just building myself. Which would have been easy to transfer from, right? It was just, hey, just keep eating healthy, keep working out. But about 8 weeks after my contest, I got injured. I had a bicep injury that flared up, and then I hurt my pec. And it really cost me a lot of momentum. Because at the time I was gaining all this momentum. I had like a following of 10,000 people. Things were starting to take off, and I had this energy, this momentum, right? I think momentum is one of the most powerful forces to our spirit. And when we lose it, it can be hard to reclaim that. At the time, we were also living in LA building our first online businesses, which was a big learning curve. So not only did I lose my ability to train for 8 weeks, but I also was going through a season of life where there's a lot of uncertainty. As a byproduct of not being able to train, I started to cope with food, and I put on about 30 pounds. I got really depressed, and it wasn't until everything came to a head and I realized, like, I need to make a change, that I started to right the ship. But it took a long time. It took a long time to really get back to the point where I was an athlete again. And so I'm going to outline the steps that I used. I'm going to outline some strategies you can use. And ultimately, the goal is that you can start to apply these strategies to your journey, to your life, and start to get your body back. Now, fast forward to today. Since that time, I think it was like 2018 is when really hit this wave of struggle. I have run multiple marathons. The fastest pace I had was an 8:03 at the Dallas Marathon, which for a former bodybuilder I thought was pretty impressive. I've also been able to run ultra marathons. The top achievement, I think, in that category was I ran 100K, which is 62 and a half miles, and I got 6th out of 13. Again, I didn't win, but I thought it was a pretty impressive accomplishment coming from a bodybuilding background. Now I have the body that I want again. My strength's up, my physique is where I want it to be, and it's all because I had to relearn. I had to change my thinking. I had to change the approach. And ultimately, that's what I hope you can do today too. So the first thing we have to do, if we want to feel like athletes again, if we want to be consistent, if we want to get our body back, we have to be willing to confront the truth. Now, a lot of times, it's easy to diminish how horrible we feel. We tell ourselves lies like, it's not that bad, and I don't really need to be in shape, and it's not that big of a deal. And we seek comfort. We wear our shirts at the pool. We don't engage in life. We start to withdraw. And that's because we aren't telling ourselves the truth. And I think that there's this message in society that reads something like, it's okay to not be where you want to be. And it's not that you have to beat yourself up, but if you're not where you want to be, you have to meet that head on. You have to look yourself in the eyes, in the mirror, and say, this is not the standard that I know I need to hold myself to. There's a really great quote that I found from Dostoevsky, who is a Russian novelist, and it reads something along the lines of, above all else, don't lie to yourself. The man who lies to himself and listens to his own lies comes to the point where he cannot distinguish between the truth within him and the truth around him. And he loses the respect for himself and for others. So think of yourself in that situation where you're just kind of coasting through life and you know, hey, I've put on 30 pounds and I'm just kind of sleepwalking. It's like, no, I need to confront the truth. For me, the confronting of the truth was I had a moment at the gym where someone belittled me. They essentially made me feel this small. And I knew that it was because I wasn't confident. I wasn't in my zone. I wasn't in my dominant, courageous, and bold stance. And so I let this guy walk all over me. And I remember leaving the gym feeling like I was this big. And I remember sitting up at night just reading and reading and reading and writing because I was like, this has to change. So nothing really changed from that point other than my psychology, the things I was focused on. But I made a resolution at that point that this is not the standard. And so you have to reach that point yourself where you say, this is not the standard. I need to hold myself to something greater. Doesn't matter that I have a business, doesn't matter that I have a family, doesn't matter that I'm busy. This has to change. And until I confront the truth, nothing's going to change. It's like you only have one life. You only have one life. So why not be healthy? Why not live it at the standard that you know you deserve to? Once you confront the truth, everything gets easier. The second step is you have to meet yourself where you're at. That means you have to meet your body in the body it's at today. You can't go back. You can't go back to your old lifting. You can't go back to your old numbers. You can't go back to what you used to do. And in fact, you also have to meet your life where it's at. If you have kids, life looks different than when you might have been in college and been in great shape. It might look different than when you didn't have all the responsibilities. So you really have to start from this point forward. It's great to have the aspirations of feeling like you used to, but you want to use that to look forward. You can't go backward. So meet yourself where you're at today. Confront the truth, but start from where you are today. If you're not going to the gym, you got to start from zero. And that's okay because there's so much progress that you'll make from zero. It's understanding that you need to let your ego go and start from this point. Once you start from this point, though, you have to build a new vision. For me, I wasn't going back to bodybuilding. I had an injury. I couldn't train the same way. But I knew I needed to get in shape. I knew I needed to be fit. I was a leader. I still had this fitness coaching company. So the new vision looked different. Looked completely different than what I was going back to. And as that vision started to emerge, other things came. I started to get into running. I started to get into yoga. I started to be able to lift heavier and stronger because I understood more what my body needed. I started to learn more about psychology and behavior change. There were so many other things that I could pull in because I was focused on a new vision. A lot of times people get stuck because they say, I got to get back to the point where I can deadlift 400 pounds and I'm going to be able to run a 7-minute mile. It's great to have that aspiration, but what does the future look like with your family? Do you want to be a better role model for your kids? Do you need to run a marathon to do that? Maybe, but maybe just doing a 5K is a good start. Maybe you can have the aspiration to do something really impressive as an athlete or be in that great shape again, but you need to be able to think, how is this fitting into my new life? 3 questions you can ask is, what's my result in the next 6 to 12 months? Second, what's the purpose? Why is it a must? Why is it important? Why must I get there? And the third point is, how is this going to impact my life? If I was to lose 30 pounds, and the reason why I'm doing it is because it's going to make me feel confident and proud of myself again. I'm going to feel like a man, or I'm going to feel like a powerful woman. Okay, how is that going to impact your business? How is that going to impact your family? How is it going to impact your marriage? How is that going to link to the other things you value? For me, it was obvious, right? It was very obvious that this is going to allow me to be the man I want to be. It's going to allow me to show up the way that I want to, but it's also going to impact my business. It's going to impact my relationships. So figure out that for you. That new vision is so important. Fourth is you have to reset your expectations. The best thing about going to the gym is you get clear markers of progress. The challenge is for a lot of people, when they're going back to the gym again, their expectation is what they used to be able to do. So they're starting from here, and even though they get to this point where they're, hey, I was at 0, I'm at 50%, I've made progress, but it's not the 100%. So it's like if you're not going to the gym, let's use running as an example. You're not running at all, but you used to be able to run 10 miles or a 10K, which is 6 miles. You used to be able to run a pretty good distance. Or you used to be able to push yourself, and you know what it's like to be pain-free at the end of a run. But now when you run 3 miles, it hurts more. It's a little bit more painful, or it's harder. It's like, well, you weren't running at all back here. This is really great progress, but it's not where I used to be. So we have to lower our expectations. The reason why we have to lower our expectations is because that's the only way we're going to start to feel good about what we're doing. Oftentimes what happens is we set this massive expectation on ourselves to get back to where we used to be automatically. And the problem with that is everything that's not that 100% feels like failure. And that creates judgment. And then you start beating yourself up. And before you know it, you're back to your old ways. You're back in that old comfort zone of eating like garbage, of not training, of taking life passively. So you got to get yourself to the point where you can, hey, I got to meet myself where I'm at. I'm going to set the bar that I know that I can hit, but it's also going to be challenging. And then I'm going to get momentum. Momentum is one of the most powerful things in our psychology. It's in our spirit. When we start to feel that energy, things get easier. And that's really where point number 5 comes in. So once we set our expectations for maybe the amount of weight we're supposed to lose per week, hey, I don't need to lose 20 pounds this month. I'm going to lose 5. If I lose 5 pounds this month, that's pretty good. That's healthy weight loss. Well, what are the small wins that I can start to leverage? We talk oftentimes on our podcast and on the show about keystone habits. Set yourself up with a morning routine that takes 10 to 15 minutes that changes the way you're thinking about your day. That might be a walk. That might be cooking breakfast. That might be packaging your meals. That might be journaling and saying, hey, what are my results for the day? This season of life, I had this whiteboard, right? And this whiteboard had my year goal, my monthly goal to get to that year-long goal, and my daily goals to meet that monthly goal. And every day, I would wake up and I'd leave the year intact. If it was a beginning of a month, I would change the month. But then from there, I would look at the daily. And I just erase the daily and say, okay, what are the results for today? What are the results for today? What are the results for today? And there's a way to track and measure to that long-term goal. It set me up to have momentum. And now you can have momentum in a lot of different areas, but again, leverage small wins, whether it's a keystone habit or it's you being able to say, hey, I ran a mile. At that time when I went through this injury and I went through this process, my lower body was still healthy, but I hadn't run ever. I realized, hey, if I start running, I'll probably start to feel better. The first time I ever ran a mile, I was blown away. I was like, I ran a mile. It took me 10 and a half minutes, but I did it. That was a small win that changed my psychology. It changed the things I was focusing on. It changed the meaning I was putting in that journey, or putting towards that journey, rather. So again, leverage small wins. Number 6, learn the language of your body. If you're coming back from an injury, you're not going to be able to train the same way. You're going to have to relearn or maybe upgrade the way you think about your body. Your body's going to tell you what it needs. If you're someone who works like this all day long, most likely you have tight shoulders. Most likely you have tight pecs. You'll probably start to recognize when you go to the gym and lift, like, man, I feel so tight, I feel so sore. Your body's telling you something. So learn the language of your body. That also means you're going to have to upgrade the way you approach nutrition, which we'll talk about in a little bit, about mindful eating, but learn the language of your body. Learn to listen to your body. If something doesn't feel right, don't push heavier weights. At least not today. Stick with something that makes you feel safe. I saw a great quote once that if you want to be able to train in your 90s, you have to train like you're 90 today. Meaning that you have to do things that are smart for your body. You want to have longevity. The ultimate goal is not that we live forever, it's that we have a high standard of life for as long as we can. So again, learning the language of my body, I might need to do more mobility. I might need to do some yoga. One of the most frustrating points that I have as a coach is when I'm meeting a gentleman and I'm trying to help him change his approach to training, and I'm like, you got to do some stretching. He's like, I don't really like stretching. It's like, well, do you like being hurt? Do you like being injured? Because that's the alternative. So you got to learn to listen to your body. You got to learn the language of your body. Start to cue into what it's telling you and leave your ego at the door. Number 7, upgrade your approach. That might be upgrading your approach to training. For me, I started to really obsess about mobility. I started to put 15 to 20 minutes of dynamic stretches at the front of every workout. I didn't work out for an hour and a half because of that. I still only did the 45 minutes to an hour, which meant, hey, my workouts look a little different, but I had to upgrade my approach. A lot of times you have to learn how to train for the body you're in, not the body you used to have. That also might be upgrading your approach to diet. From my perspective, I had this bodybuilding mindset where I had to eat 3,500 calories, and I wasn't burning that many calories, so I just ended up putting on a bunch of fat. I had to take a new approach to nutrition, one that challenged me. So I tried veganism. I tried going vegetarian for a month. I didn't really like how it made me feel, but it challenged my approach to food. I tried keto. I did a 72-hour fast. I did a 24-hour fast, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about food all day. This is really fascinating. It just illuminated what was happening in my mind, but I couldn't turn to food to cope with stress or anxiety. So again, try a new approach. Don't go back to the same keto diet. Don't go back to the same workout plan. Try a new approach. Simplify it. Reset the expectations for what new looks like. Number 8 is find a new challenge. So if you used to work out really heavy, find a way to push yourself in cardio. If you can't run, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't run, my knees, my joints, my back, go hit the elliptical, go hit the bike. Push yourself in a new way. It might be also adding different modalities, like breath work or Wim Hof breathing. Do something that gets you some exertion. Find a new challenge. The challenge is going to allow you to feel like an athlete again. The thing that we're actually going after is the emotion. The thing we're going after is the sensation that comes after a great workout. It's the feeling, it's the pump, it's the sensation when we push ourselves and we see that we can do it. So that might have to look different in this season until you get back to that point where your body can handle it. For me, the new challenge was running. I had a client who wanted us to come live with him in Dallas. He said, hey, I want someone to come and live with me and be my exclusive trainer and really beat the hell out of me for a month. And I said, hey, I can do that. I'll be the guy who steps up for that. As we were talking about his goals, he said, I want to be able to run a 5K in under 20 minutes. That was fascinating because I didn't know how to do that. So I learned how to do that. While we were living there, he's 50. His body wasn't really in the space where he could start running yet. But I still had the challenge. So I said, hey, I'm going to do it. And I showed him how it's done. He's like, wow, this is so impressive. And for me, I felt that instant gratification of the win. I did something. I did something that pushed me. I pushed myself to the limit. Find your next challenge. Right? Once you're walking through this, you might get to the point where you say, hey, I can do this. I can start to push the weights. I can start to push the cardio. I can test myself against this new diet. Find a way to challenge yourself. I guarantee you'll feel better. Number 9. This is something that most people struggle with because they don't know how it's done. And it's about understanding your relationship with food. So you have to start practicing mindful eating. Your relationship with food is essentially how you approach food. How do you think about food? Most of us are mindless with our nutrition. Most of us live in a constant state of thinking about a bunch of things and multitasking while we're shoveling food into our mouth. And that's kind of how our society operates. Think of fast food. Think of dining out. All the chips. Practice mindful eating, which is the experience of being present with your food. We have a great video about how to mindfully eat and listen to your hunger cues that I'd highly suggest you check out, and I'll make sure it's linked up here. And once you've done all this, the last thing you have to do is you have to upgrade your inner circle. You have to start to put people in your circle who are healthier than you, who challenge themselves, who have a higher standard, because you're going to rise to their standard. If you're hanging around people who aren't healthy, who aren't fit, who don't take care of themselves, you're going to be just like them. One of the best investments we ever made was in a mastermind. It's called the Rising Star Mastermind. It was a group of young entrepreneurs who were in the online coaching space who were all growing together. It was the scariest investment I ever made in my life because I wasn't used to investing in myself. But when I joined that, I started to get around people who were winning, who wanted to win, who were ambitious. And it changed the way I think. From there, I started to bring in other mentors, bring in other people who were experts in mobility or experts in running, who had different skills than I did. And that changed my approach to fitness forever. So again, if you're seeing that you're challenged with getting back to that state where you feel your best, ask yourself, who's influencing me? Ask yourself, who are the people in my circle who are empowering me to get better? If you don't have those people, then start to seek them. Go to the gym and start building friendships. Hire a coach, hire a mentor. Do something that puts you in an environment where people are striving to win, because that's the only way to become a winner too. So I hope this is helpful. These are your 10 tips to get your momentum back, to get your energy back, to get your body back to where it needs to be. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway in the comment section below. If you love this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and above all else, go out and conquer your day. Cheers.